Tonight, a fugitive ex-cop is arrested on a double murder charge in connection with the killing of a prominent Philippine public relations expert 23 years ago.
Philippine House lawmakers begin another attempt to revise the country's constitution.
The Philippine economy reportedly grew in 2022 at its fastest pace in over 4 decades.
And the United States will send its advanced battle tanks to Ukraine to help in its fight against Russian invaders.
Good evening, I'm Tony Velasquez.
And I'm Pia Gutierrez.
On our broadcast tonight, a potential breakthrough in the sensational 23-year-old murder of a public relations expert whose death had once been linked to then Philippine President Joseph Estrada. A former police officer who is a suspect in the crime was arrested after more than 2 decades on the run. Jeff Caparaz has tonight's top story.
By virtue of an arrest warrant, intelligence operatives from Police Regional Office 7, National Capital Region Police, and Police Regional Office 3 arrested former policeman William Reed Sunday afternoon in Barangay Poblacion, Pulilan, Bulacan. Then Senior Police Officer 1 William Reed was arrested because of his alleged involvement in the killing of Pierman Salvador Bobby Dacer and his driver Emmanuel Corbito back in 2000. The warrant was issued by then presiding Judge Rodolfo Fonpereda of Manila RTC Branch 41 in May 2001. He was charged with double murder with no bail recommended. The Bulacan PNP said Reed did not change his identity while in Bulacan.
Base dun sa investigation nila, after na nakuha nila at nagtanong sila dun sa ang sabi nakatira daw siya sa may Balatong A sa isang barangay ng Pulilan at halos nakikita na nila dun na mahigit 1 taon na nakikita dun.
They also received reports that Reed worked as a security guard in a construction company in the province. He was allegedly living by himself on a rented house. The participation of Reed to the double murder has not been established, but according to a source of ABS-CBN News, Reed did not expect to be arrested and thought that the case against him was already dismissed. The 57-year-old former policeman is detained at the custodial facility of the Regional Special Operations Group inside Camp Bagong Diwa in Taguig, while operatives are waiting for his commitment order to the Manila City Jail. In a statement, NCRPO said Reed is on the list of most wanted persons at the national level, with a 250,000 peso reward for his arrest. Manhunt and follow-up operations are ongoing for the arrest of other suspects. In a text statement, the sir's daughter Karina said they are waiting for the government to reach out to the family. 2 eyewitnesses had said the sir was abducted and killed on November 24, 2000 and then were strangled by policemen using electronic cords before their bodies were set on fire. Both eyewitnesses were then arrested by the National Bureau of Investigation over the alleged involvement. One of them admitted to helping set the victims on fire. The case implicated some of the country's prominent politicians, including former President Joseph Estrada and former Senator Panfilo Lacson, after then Senior Superintendent Cesar Mancao linked them to the case. Mancao surrendered in 2017 over the murder case and apologized to Estrada and Lacson, saying he had no personal knowledge of the supposed involvement of the two. Mancao escaped from the NBI's custody in May 2013 by changing the padlock of his detention cell. Lacson was cleared by the higher courts. While then Senior Superintendent Michael Ray Aquino, who was also implicated by Mancao, was ordered released by a Manila court. Jeff Caparaz, ABS-CBN News.
A human rights lawyer in Kuwait calls for revisions to a labor law on the treatment of foreign household workers there. His suggestion comes on the heels of the gruesome murder of a Filipina who was killed by the son of her employer. The details from ABS-CBN's Middle East senior correspondent Maxi Santiago.
A human rights lawyer based in Kuwait is pushing for the revision of the country's law on domestic workers. Attorney Atyab Al-Shati says the law is useless as workers are treated as possessions by their employers.
In terms of protection, I wouldn't say it is effective. Matter of fact, I would say there are a lack of flow implementation mechanisms. You take a deep look at the law, you will find that why would I in 2023 accept terms in which domestic workers are held inside their houses as if they were a property.
She made the remarks after Kuwaiti authorities arrested a suspect in the murder of Filipino household worker Julie B. Ranara.
To start a new type of law that regulates services like cleaning services instead of domestic workers. If you cannot understand human dignity, and if you cannot treat people as workers but someone in your house, that's uncivilized, and it would definitely lead to violations, uncountable violations.
Based on the official death certificate of Ranara issued by the Ministry of Health Forensic Department, she sustained fractures to the skull and lower jaw, as well as brain laceration. At least one Filipino organization in Kuwait urges the Philippine government to fulfill its promise to protect Filipino workers abroad.
The executive department could do better in handling this subject matter. We expect our president to speak about it and make sure and make true of his promises to protect us OFW. We're calling our government to exert more effort in assuring the protection of all OFWs here in Kuwait, especially our HSW.
The Philippine Department of Migrant Workers has prohibited the employer of Ranara from hiring another Filipino. Ranara's remains are expected to arrive in Manila by Friday. Maxi Santiago, ABS-CBN News, Kuwait.
The SF260 fleet of the Philippine Air Force is grounded after 2 pilots were killed Wednesday in a crash of one of the aircraft. Bianca Dava reports.
The remaining 4 SF260 planes of the Philippine Air Force would be grounded while an investigation is ongoing on the crash of an SF260 attack aircraft that killed both pilots of the plane. Thursday morning, a local police official said aircraft accident investigation teams have secured the crash site in Bataan. The wreckage will be transported back to its base in Sangli Point in Cavite. The remains of the pilots were brought to the Villamor Air Base in Pasay City. They were identified as Captain Ian Jeruca Sinos Pasinos, the pilot in command from Cagayan de Oro City, and Captain John Paulo Ong Aviso, the co-pilot from Zamboanga City. Both are seasoned pilots who received medals for their bravery in different air combat operations, including the military offensives against the Maute group in Marawi. Captain Pasinos was also directly involved in the all-out military offensives against the Abu Sayyaf in Bohol in August 2017. PAF spokesperson Colonel Maria Consuelo Castillo explained the SF260 does not have an ejection mechanism, but pilots have parachutes for emergency bailout.
Even if they had that option po, they did not use that option because they made sure that they landed the aircraft on a clear area para po hindi na mag-cause ng further damage sa people and property. So ito po siguro kung napaka-commendable po at napaka-heroic at the last second na nagawa nila ito, na deviate po nila sa populace yung aircraft.
In separate statements, the Department of National Defense and the Armed Forces of the Philippines offered their condolences to the families and friends affected. The Philippine Air Force is looking into all possible factors in determining the cause of Wednesday's crash.
We also check yung material factors. Titignan din po natin yung mga natirang systems na pwede pang ma-recover to be able to at least go back kung yung mga transmission na ginawa nila with the tower prior the actual crash landing. And then of course we also have to look at possible human factors, meteorological factors.
The SF260s were delivered to the Philippines from Italy in 1992. Despite decades of use, Castillo said the Air Force maintains the plane's good condition.
We can assure you that the aircraft is well maintained. We have very competent maintenance crew to maintain this aircraft. Kahit po medyo may edad na tong aircraft na to, they're still being used and naging very effective po sila sa ating mga air operations.
Bianca Dava, ABS-CBN News.
Philippine House lawmakers revive attempts at amending the country's 1987 constitution. RG Cruz tells us experts remain divided on whether the charter needs any revision at all.
Previous efforts to revise the 1987 charter were unsuccessful, but that did not discourage the House Committee on Constitutional Amendments from starting deliberations on 5 proposals to call an elected constitutional convention to rewrite the country's 36-year-old basic law. 2005 Consultative Commission member Raul Lambino urges lawmakers to consider a 6-year term with re-election for president and vice president, the removal of term limits for lawmakers and local officials, and the election of senators by region, with the country being divided into 8 senatorial regions with 6 senators each.
Magiging 8 po yung senatorial regions. Dagdagan po natin yung numero ng mga senador. 6 po bawat regions. Kung 8 po yung senatorial regions, magiging 48 po na senador. At elected sila by region. Sa tingin po natin, magiging mas responsive and responsible po yung mga senador.
Former Bayan Muna Representative Nery Colmenares observes one proposal disqualifies only President Marcos from benefiting from any term extensions.
Ang napansin ko lang, ang magbe-benefit yung Vice President, Sara Duterte. So, disqualified si President Marcos, but Sara Duterte is qualified now to have 10 years. Parang na-notice ko lang yon. Bakit hindi silang dalawa ang disqualified?
Experts invited to the hearing flatly rejected charter change, saying the country's problems are not due to the shortcomings of the Constitution.
The problems of poverty, corruption, social justice, lahat yan did not come from the Constitution.
Former COMELEC Chairperson Christian Munsod, a member of the 1986 Commission that wrote the current charter, notes that the current Constitution's full potential has yet to be maximized.
Instead of rushing to amend the Constitution, why don't our legislators pass an anti-dynasty law of, say, 4 degrees for the barangay elections this year? And how about the abuse by political dynasties of the party-list system? The Constitution, Your Honors, is not the problem. It is part of the solution. Minor amendments may just be Trojan horses to a broader agenda because once convened, the convention or constituent assembly has plenary powers that cannot be limited by law.
There are also questions on whether it is proper for Congress to empower itself to relax foreign investment limits.
Is it proper for Congress to act as a constituent assembly in order to vote for itself, acting as a Congress, as a legislative department, additional powers to grant equal rights to foreigners without going through the process of amendment? Because in an amendment, it's Congress and the people ratifying. But if you give it only to Congress as a Congress, Congress alone will exercise that power.
The committee's chairman, Rufus Rodriguez, says this is just the first in a series of public consultations about charter change. But the Makabayan bloc of lawmakers says pushing for charter change amid a worsening economic crisis due to government neglect and incompetence is simply absurd and ridiculous. The group adds lawmakers must focus on more pressing concerns. RG Cruz, ABS-CBN News.
Up next, the Philippine gross domestic product exceeds the government's target for 2022.
Stay tuned for more stories after the break.
We're back on The World Tonight. The U.S. follows Germany's move to send advanced battle tanks to Ukraine's army. U.S. President Biden says America will send 31 M1 Abrams tanks for Ukraine to use in its fight against Russian invaders.
The Abrams tanks are the most capable tanks in the world. They're also extremely complex to operate and maintain. So we're also giving Ukraine the parts and equipment necessary to effectively sustain these tanks on the battlefield. And we'll begin to train the Ukrainian troops on these issues of sustainment, logistics, and maintenance as soon as possible. Delivering these tanks to the field is going to take time. Time that we'll use to make sure the Ukrainians are fully prepared to integrate the Abrams tanks into their defenses.
Biden had been hesitant to send the tanks, but this changed after Germany announced it is sending 14 of its Leopard tanks to Ukraine.
Germany didn't force me to change their mind. We wanted to make sure we were all together. That's what we're going to do all along, and that's what we're doing right now.
Russia denounced Germany's move to send its tanks to Ukraine. The Russian Foreign Ministry says Berlin is abandoning its historical responsibility to Moscow that arose from the Nazi crimes of World War II. The Russian embassy in Berlin warns this will lead to an escalation of the conflict in Ukraine and cause irreparable damage to Russian-German relations.
The U.S. Vice President visits the site of a mass shooting in California in which 11 people were killed by a lone gunman at a Lunar New Year celebration. Kamala Harris offered a bouquet of white flowers at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio in Monterey Park. She urged U.S. lawmakers to immediately address gun control issues in America.
They'll make something that is where we all must speak up and speak to our elected representatives about what we have the right to expect in the neighborhood for the, in the interest of the safety, security, and the well-being of people like those whose lives were ended.
Harris also met privately with the families of the victims, one of whom was a 68-year-old Filipino-American, Valentino Alvero. Investigators have yet to determine the motive of the gunman, a 72-year-old Asian-American who shot and killed himself after the attack.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump may soon return to 2 more social media platforms. That's after Meta allowed his Facebook and Instagram accounts to be reinstated after a 2-year suspension. Meta indefinitely suspended Trump's accounts in the wake of the deadly January 6th Capitol attack. It had said Trump's posts risk inciting more violence. But Meta now says the risk to public safety has sufficiently receded. The company's decision comes as Trump aims for a White House comeback in 2024.
China claims its daily COVID deaths have significantly dropped since the start of January. Chinese health officials say there were 896 deaths attributed to the disease this week. This was a decline of nearly 80% from January 4th. Severe COVID cases in China's hospitals reportedly down by 72%. They are now at 36,000 from the 128,000 in early January. The release of the figures came after the Lunar New Year celebration, which sparked fears of a new surge in the country. China was hit by a new COVID wave in December, which prompted countries to tighten screening measures for Chinese travelers.
The Philippine economy expanded in 2022 at its fastest rate in over 40 years due to so-called revenge spending. Economists now call for improved agricultural output to boost growth even further. Jackie Pascual reports.
The Philippine economy grew a faster than expected 7.6% in 2022, the highest growth since 1976 and beating government's 6.5 to 7.5% target range for the year. That's despite high inflation and other economic challenges. While Malacanang attributes the strong growth to President Marcos' good economic stewardship, the National Economic and Development Authority says it's due to the reopening of the economy following the community lockdowns of 2021.
Then there is that yung sinasabi nating pent-up demands na People just wanted away from the activities like restaurants, going to restaurants, going for leisure, just wanted to go out and spend.
Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman believes the strong GDP print validates the country's economic strategies and shows that government is on track with its agenda for prosperity. For RCBC's chief economist Michael Ricafort, the growth rate is high because it's coming from a low base in 2021 when the economy had yet to recover the pandemic.
Ibig sabihin nun, sobrang ganda, sobrang unlad. Ano siya dahil math, no? Maliit yung base, no? Pero may low base pa rin. Dahil may mga lockdown pa noon 2001, di ba? Yung the year prior to that. No? May mga restrictions pa noon, wala pang turismo, lalo na yung foreign tourism, wala pa noon. Yung mga estudyante, hindi pa nakabalik sa eskwelahan.
Ricafort expects better growth this year due to the rise in economic activities. But he says the agriculture sector should catch up with other sectors. Agriculture only grew 0.5% in 2022 compared to industry's 6.7% and services at 9.2%.
Kasi pag umunlad yung agriculture, lalo bibilis yung economic growth, tsaka mas inclusive, mas marami, lalo sa yung address kahirapan, yung poverty.
NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan agrees, adding it would help if there is a full-time agriculture secretary.
The president, he said would be in a better position to address some of these issues. As he also himself said, he would not expect to stay there for the long haul, but hopefully we can get a full-time agriculture secretary. But in the meantime, I think we just have to attend to those many problems there in agriculture.
Balisacan is confident the government can sustain the high growth trajectory this year.
Our improved COVID-19 risk management and the easing of mobility restrictions have created positive economic outlook, boosting economic activity and creating more jobs despite external winds or headwinds.
Government retained its growth target for 2023 to 6 to 7% as it aims to further reduce inflation. Jackie Pascual, ABS-CBN News.
A third of Filipinos believe their quality of life improved in 2022. That's according to a social weather station survey conducted from December 10th to the 14th. 34% of 1,200 respondents said their life became better last year. That's an increase of 8 points from a similar poll in October. Meanwhile, 26% claimed their quality of life got worse, while 39% said it stayed the same.
The Philippines' strong economic growth in 2022 fails to prop up local shares. Michelle Long tells us why.
Unimpressed or fully priced in already? Philippine stocks closed lower on Thursday, despite data showing the Philippine economy enjoyed its best growth since 1976 last year, shaking off troubles from a 14-year high inflation and policy rate. This is one of Asia's strongest growth numbers against a backdrop of a slowing global economy. Economist and former Social Welfare Secretary Noel Leco notes, while the economy is on its way to recovery, many who got hit by the COVID-19 pandemic continue to hurt.
The pain being experienced by fixed income wage earners. So the economy is growing, but it's not being felt by the majority of our people because of high inflation and with no increases in their income. There's so much fat in that budget that may not be necessarily defensible right now, especially when we are facing a major prospect. We've been hearing a lot about this intelligence fund. Also, some of the infrastructure projects that may not be necessarily directly needed right now.
For the day, the PSE index lost 0.5% to close at 70.42. In corporate stories, Lucky Me Noodles and Skyflakes maker Mondanisian is buying a 15% stake in the Liu family's Figaro Coffee Group for 820 million pesos. That's 1 peso per share. Mondanisian will subscribe to primary shares of Figaro, and proceeds will be used to finance its expansion. Mondanisan CEO Henry Soy Santos says Figaro will give them greater exposure to the food service sector, which they see as a growth driver here and abroad, while their scale will help the Figaro Group enhance its procurement capabilities. The Figaro Group owns the coffee chain, Angel's Pizza, Tienmas, and Cafe Portofino. Meanwhile, Ayala Corp's energy arm ASEN set to begin the construction of its 2.8 billion peso 60 megawatt Pangasinan solar farm, its first in the province and second project for the year. This will bring ASEN's attributable renewables capacity in the country to 1,600 megawatts. Once operational, the project will generate 94 gigawatts of renewable energy per year, enough to power some 55,000 homes and save some 58,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. In other news, Megawide bags 3 more projects with First Park Homes for the supply and installation of its precast housing units, bringing its total projects with First Park to 11 with 19,000 housing units. The 3 are located in Cavite, Bulacan, and Quezon. Megawide's precast plant located in Taytay, Rizal is among the largest and most advanced in Southeast Asia, with a capacity for up to 168,000 cubic meters of precast per year. First Park Homes is the affordable housing unit and joint venture of the Century Properties Group with Mitsubishi Corp. Michelle Long, ABS-CBN News.
Our final word tonight is a quote from Tyler Hamilton. The truth always finds its way out. Even years and years and years later, the truth always prevails.
And that is the world tonight, the 26th of January, 2023. I'm Tia Gutierrez.
I'm Tony Velasquez from the Philippines. Thank you. Mabuhay.